In their publication Nudge, Mr. Thaler, Richard and Sunstein, Cass, describe how large organizations, especially governments, can shape decisions to nudge individuals in a certain direction. After the success of the book, several governments worldwide have picked up the idea, and so lots of nudge units were created. And today we will have a look at those. Welcome to the Soft Skill channel. My name is Sebastian Jung, and today I'd like to present some nudge units to you. Short recap, what is a nudge? Nudges are a concept described by Richard Thaler and Cass Sunstein in their book of the same name. And the idea is that when we make a decision, we receive a small metaphorical nudge in the right direction. Imagine, for example, a salad bar that is placed right at the entrance of a cafeteria. Now, obviously, this does not force us to eat salad. We can go straight past the salad bar and look for the desserts. However, placing the salad bar in this way will make more people on average eat a salad. It will make people eat healthier. And there are plenty more examples for nudges. We will discover some more later in the video. Now, in their book, Thaler and Sunstein described nudges as a tool for large organizations, especially for governments. And after the big success of the book, several governments have picked up the idea and have created so-called nudge units. Small special departments, groups, whatever, that provide consultation for other departments that help use the knowledge from behavioral sciences for government policies. And they do research, they do studies where they try to figure out how can we shape the decision process, whatever, so more people will choose the preferred option. I will always provide one or two examples for the work of a certain nudge unit. Please note that this is somewhat arbitrarily. I always picked one or two examples I liked for some reason or found funny or whatever. Of course, those nudge units have done a lot of more work, more studies. This is just a small glimpse into their work. Let's start with the mother of all nudge units, the British Behavioural Insights Team, BIT for short. This was the first nudge unit that was ever created. It was founded in London in 2010 with a mere 7 people. Richard Thaler, one of the authors of Nudge, was involved as a consultant in the creation of this first nudge unit. It was and is led by the British psychologist David Halpern, and Halpern has also written a book about his work in the BIT, which is called Inside the Nudge Unit, and it was published in 2015. In 2014, the BIT was converted to a limited company, so it was turned into a private consulting firm. It is no longer part of the government. And today it is owned completely by the British non-profit organization Nesta. It has offices around the world today. It has offices in the US, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, Singapore, France, and more. There is an extensive website where you can find out about the work of the BIT, and you can download publications, reports, all the way back to their founding year 2010, and they even have a YouTube channel with plenty of videos. So there is lots of information. One example for the work of the BIT that I found interesting is about reminder letters for delinquent taxpayers. So reminder letters that should encourage people to pay their taxes and the BIT tried to figure out how to best design them. And what they found out was that a peer comparison is especially effective. So if you tell people, oh, the vast majority of citizens has already paid their taxes, just you have not, then this is very effective in encouraging them to do so. I find this interesting. This is also an example we encountered in the book Nudge. And a similar study I also found interesting concerns encouraging people to save more. Because if a family has a mere £1,000 in savings, this will significantly reduce the risk of this family slipping into debt. So encouraging people to save is a good project, and the government, the British government, tried to do that by providing a bonus. So you can create a special savings account, and if you actually use it, if you deposit money into it, if you use it to save money, then the government will provide some additional money, will provide a bonus. And a lot of people started this special account, but only a small part of those actually used it, actually deposited money into it, actually did some saving. And the BIT was tasked with figuring out how to encourage people to actually use the account to actually save. And they again tried different variations of info letters, and one approach that worked well, that I found interesting, is to emphasize the fear of missing out. So to tell people, oh, you could have got a nice bonus if you had used the account, but now this bonus is gone for good. And you could get a bonus in the future if you use it, but if you don't use it, well, yeah, you will miss out on this nice bonus. And again, it was interesting for me that this is so effective. Let's take a look at the US next. There the situation is a bit complicated because there seem to be two nudge units founded in the same year. First we have the Social and Behavioral Sciences team, SBST for short, that was founded in 2015 and disbanded in 2017. So it doesn't exist anymore. It was led by the cognitive scientist Maya Shankar. And we have the Office of Evaluation Sciences, OES for short, which was also established in 2015, and which seems to still exist. The material on their website isn't that recent, so I'm not sure, but yeah, it wasn't disbanded or anything. It belongs to the General Services Administration, whatever that is. One example I found interesting that belongs to the SBST and the OES. It seems when they both existed, they worked together, so they were not competing or anything. One example I found that concerns primarily the SBST is about a handbook for prison inmates. There, the SBST supported another department in creation of this manual, and it provides help for the time shortly before release from prison and the time afterwards, and helps people to reintegrate into society. And among other things, there are checklists in this book that especially deal with issues where time and the right timing is critical. For example, it is very important that you apply for a birth certificate before your release, because then you can get a proper ID right after release, and this will allow you to apply for jobs. So, and this is important, and the SBST supported that other department in the creation of those checklists. And another topic that is covered in this manual is mental health, because of course this is a situation where there is an increased risk. And the SBST helped to destigmatize the topic in the manual to make it more likely that people who need help will actually seek and accept help. An example that concerns the OES is about getting more people from historically underrepresented populations into public service. And a hindrance here was that the application forms ask for a demographic information, but it is voluntarily and it is an opt-in procedure. So I guess you have to mark some box, I want to provide information, and then the fields will be displayed, something like that. And a lot of people don't enter this information. So it is not clear in the big pool of applicants who are the people who belong to those groups who you want to hire, preferably to represent those groups better. And the OES was tasked with figuring out how the process can be improved, and what they recommended is to make the process opt-out. So it is still voluntarily to enter the information, but I guess now the fields are displayed by default, and there is some checkbox, I don't want to provide information, where you can opt out. And they also recommended to use simple language in regard to this information, to explain what should be entered and why. And this also encouraged more people to enter this information. Next, let's have a look at Australia. The behavioral economics team of the Australian government, BETA for short, was established in 2015-2016, and it is currently the largest nudge unit in the world. 2020 it had 30 employees. It is the largest nudge unit considering those that are government organizations. The BIT, as a big private consulting firm, is bigger, but in regard to government organizations, BETA is the largest. It was established and led in the early years by Harvard professor Michael Hiscox. There is a nice extensive page on the website of the Australian government about BETA, where you can download reports as PDF files, and there are also some videos from BETA on the YouTube channel of the Australian government. So again, there is lots of information you can look at. One example I found interesting about one example of their work deals with organ and tissue donations, and this I found interesting because it's also an important topic in the book nudge. Now, Australia seems to have an opt-in procedure, so you are not an organ donor by default, and you have to register to become one. And as many others, Australia suffers from an intention-action gap. In surveys, 80% of Australians say, yes, I would be willing to donate organs or tissue. But only 1 in 3 Australians actually goes through with the procedure, actually registers as a donor. So there are plenty of people who would be willing to donate, but who haven't made the effort to actually register. And BETA was tasked with figuring out how to best encourage those people to go through with the registration. And what they found out is that info material was most effective when it emphasized how quick and easy the procedure is. If it said, yeah, you can register in 1 minute and it's quite effortless, then this encouraged people best to give it a try. And they also surveyed people about a prompted choice approach. Again, we know this from the book nudge. Prompted choice means you still have an opt-in procedure, but you are specifically asked whether you want to be an organ donor on specific occasions. And responses were quite positive towards that, especially if this occasion has something to do with health. But it was still quite positive if it is a general occasion, such as renewal of your driver's license, which is the approach currently used in the US. Another interesting example that seems to be a bit more widely known concerns the risk of antibiotic-resistant germs. Antibiotic-resistant germs are a big problem because if antibiotics don't work anymore, we don't have a good weapon against them. And one thing that can lead to the creation of those antibiotic-resistant germs if too much antibiotics are prescribed, if antibiotics are prescribed in cases where they are actually not necessary, then the risk of the creation of those germs is increased. And so Beda was tasked with figuring out how to get general practitioners to be more cautious when prescribing antibiotics. And what they did is they picked those 30% of general practitioners in an area who prescribe especially many antibiotics, and sent an info letter to those. And this info letter proved to be most effective, once again, when they used a peer comparison, when they told them, yeah, most general practitioners in your area, the average general practitioner prescribes way less antibiotics than you do, with a nice graphic with a stack of pills that was of course way bigger for that specific general practitioner than for the average. And yeah, this worked very well. This made people more cautious in prescribing antibiotics. Finally, I was of course curious about Germany, my own country, and it turns out we do have a nudge unit which is called Wirksam regieren, literally translated governing effectively. It was established in 2015. It is rather low profile, not widely known, but it has its own page on the website of the German government where you can find information about their projects. And one I found interesting concerns the measles vaccination. Because measles are a highly contagious viral disease, as you probably know, which can be fatal, which people can die from. And there is a very effective vaccination against the measles that is so effective that it could eradicate the disease for good. But this hasn't happened yet, and in Germany the problem is that there are a lot of adults that are not properly vaccinated, not fully vaccinated. And the Wirksam Regieren group tried to figure out why that is. And they found out that a lot of people don't understand the risk and the topic. 1 in 5 adults believes that measles is not a serious disease, and 3/4 of adults do not know that a measles vaccination is recommended for adults. And Wirksam Regieren then further tried to figure out where this misinformation comes from, why people don't know the situation. And they found out that the old info material is to blame, because the old info material about the measles vaccination was one for all, one size fits all material that was for all target groups together. So you had one brochure or whatever, both for adults and for children, and this led to adults believing that measles is a children's disease entirely and that it does not concern them. And Wirksam Regieren then tried in a study info material that was specifically addressed at adults, and this worked nicely. So people who received this info material specifically for adults were more likely to get the vaccination than people who received the classic info material. What do you think of nudge units? Do you find them useful or are you critical of them? Let me know in the comments. And while you're at it, why not give the video a like and subscribe to the channel? It is so quick and easy, and the other viewers do it as well. We will see each other again next week. For today I take my leave. Have a nice day. See you next time.